Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the SeeAudio RINKO. This is a collaboration that SeeAudio has done with renowned reviewer Zeos, and it's something novel in the sense that what they've done is they've taken a DD and joined it with a planar driver, well, to offer something which is kind of different and not really done. The planar driver is worth mentioning that what they're doing or what they're using is actually a micro planar driver, which is a planar driver which is reminiscent of kind of a BA. So it's not the let's say the normal planar driver that you would think that is used more commonly. Okay, this is the box. Not really my thing, this whole waifu thing. I think we kind of could have already grown up out of this, but anyway, this is just my opinion. The box is, or the unboxing experience is very much along what we expect from SeeAudio, although I would have liked a little bit more of quality on the actual inside. We still get this card which works as a stand or something. I didn't really pay much attention. Another card, the box came over there, the IEMs came over there. This doesn't come out, as you can see, it stays there. Inside of the actual box, which I'll show to you now, came the tips and the cable, which I mean, they are okay. The cable, I was expecting something a little bit better, to be honest. The tips would have been nice to have a little bit more selection of tips, but hey, look, it is what it is. I'm not going to really complain and beat a dead horse. This is the box, which is the same as the box that came with the Yume 2, so it's a nice box. I like the construction, nice and solid, fake leather, but it's nice. Again, the only remark I do on it is I wish this could have been kind of embroidered. I don't think that this would have been that much more expensive, and at least it would last a long time. This will ultimately disappear, and obviously being white, it will get dirty pretty soon. And as I said, inside came the cable, which I'm not using the stock cable, and some tips. Basic, you know, if you consider that this will probably be around the $100 mark, at least that's what I have been able to ascertain. You know, you expect a little bit more. Anyway, as for the cable that I'm using is just for those that want to know, it's a nice HTK cable. Okay, silver plated, 4.4 termination, 2-pin connector. As for the IMs themselves, they're relatively small. They've got this kind of a shell finish which is very reminiscent of kind of reminds you of the finish that you get, for example, on the variations, the finish that you get on some of the truth year stuff as well. It's got this kind of shell finish. It seems that the faceplate is metal, okay, and it's actually only the shell that's that kind of printed material. You can just about make out what's inside, not very well, but you can. You can see some ducts there if you look carefully. There you go. Okay, but you can't really make out. And inside, as I said, there's a single DD and that microplanar. I would have liked, to be honest with you, I would have liked this writing on the actual IM to have been just a little bit more, I don't know, polished up, a little bit nicer, but it's fine. In terms of the fit, it's actually not bad. It's although it's got a small form factor, it doesn't sit as nicely as, for example, say an HE Sound heart monitor, which is also a very small IM, but it just sits nicer. The HE Sound actually sits very nicely. I've never really had anybody complain about it. As for the RINKO, it once you choose the tip, and I mean, I'm using BGVP tips, as you can see here, or the KB ears. They're basically the same thing. I'm using the medium size, which is this kind of cyan blue color. Once you find the right tip, and you know it's actually able to insert itself into your ear canal deep enough, it's fine and doesn't really bug you. Isolation will then, of course, be good and so on. But you know, be prepared to play around a little bit with the actual earphone to make sure that it does fit into your ears properly, because it's not going to be something that's just going to be easy. They're not very heavy; they're very light, so no fatigue in that aspect. You know, that's a good thing. Anyway, on to what we want to know, which is what is the sound of the RINKO, and what am I comparing it here with. And let me just say what I have here first, and then I'll carry on. As for what I used, most of the listening was done with my NX7, and with the truthier Shio as the deck being used. I also used the Q11, the FiO Q11, which is basically the same 43131 if I'm not mistaken, deck chip, okay, and sorry, 43198, sorry, 43198. Yeah, and that's basically it. I've got here what? I've got here some IEMs which, well, one of them is been an IEM which is also released recently, which is the Letshuoer GALILEO. It's a 1+1, 1 DD, 1 dynamic driver, 1 BA, 1 DD. The BA is a Sony 2389 and the dynamic driver is a 10mm. And then I have here what? I've got here the BGVP THI5 Face Red. Very much an IM that went under the radar. It's a 1+2. And although it's a little bit more expensive than the rest, you can pick this up for about $130, give or take. And I thought it would make sense because at that price, which is significantly lower than what its original price was, and already in its original price, it wasn't that it was bad, but it entered a price range which was highly competitive. But at $130, it is an IM that's worthwhile looking into because it is a really good sounding IM. It's well built. It's solid. It's got a nice 3D printed shell inside which holds all the drivers. It is a well put together IM. Probably one of the better BGVPs, to be honest. So I've got that. I've got the GALILEO, as I mentioned, and then I've got here the FiO, the JH3, which is a 1+2, priced at about $55, give or take. And I've got here another IM, which is a Senfer DT9, priced at about $35. The Senfer, the DT9, the FiO, and the Face Red all have one thing in common, which is they are IMs that went very much under the radar. The Senfer is a 1+1. It's got a CNT driver as a DD, and then one single BA, 33518 if I'm not mistaken. And it is an absolute beast of an IM, okay? If you want a nice, fun, and as I said in my review of it, unapologetic V-shaped IM that plays well, this is that. The DT9 is a V signature IM like the RINKO, okay, and I'm already jumping a little bit ahead, but it is an absolute beast of an IM. The JH3 is the sequel to the EA3, and it shares a lot of the same DNA, same dynamic driver, which is the huge 13mm driver. And again, a very interesting sounding IM that just went very much under the radar. Not many people really paid and gave it its deserved attention. Anyway, going on to the RINKO so that we can set the stage. It is a V-shaped signature IM, period, end of story. It is, however, contrary to the majority of the V-shaped IMs, a well-executed V-shaped IM. It has got great bass. The bass is great. I think the balance, in my opinion, the balance between the sub-bass and the mid-bass is has been well obtained. Although the mid-bass does bleed slightly into the mids, and by bleeding into the mids, it accentuates a little bit more that recessed feeling of the mids, and camouflages and muffles down certain vocals even further. But the bass is well done. The mids, as I've just said, are recessed. You know, they are of good quality, but they're just recessed. You very quickly notice that they would need a little bit more energy to kind of match up with the rest of the frequency and capabilities of the IM. And then the highs, although graphically they seem to be more prominent than when you listen to, they are well executed. They're not. I didn't find the highs to be aggressive. I didn't find the highs to be fatiguing. No, I found the highs to actually be well executed. At times even I would have liked a little bit more energy, okay, kind of counteract this emphasis on the lower frequencies, but the highs are well done. So definitely, yeah, the star of the show in terms of the frequency response is the bass, and then the highs. The mids are recessed. Going on to the the more technical aspects, so timbre, tonality, soundstage, imaging, detail retrieval, and so on and so forth. Well, timbre and tonality are going to be correct to a certain point, as long as you accept something which is obviously colored. So it is a colored sounding IEM that will color certain instruments in a good way, and others not so much. I didn't find pianos, for example, to be correctly portrayed. However, I didn't find it offensive. I didn't say, oh no, it's bad. It's no. You just feel that it's a husky piano. Okay, in my opinion. Guitars as well, I found them to be sometimes faithful, sometimes not so much faithful. But again, it wasn't offensive. It wasn't nothing that I would, oh no, this is bad. No, none of that. In terms of the vocals, the female vocals suffer a little bit from that recess of the mids. The male vocals can sound sometimes excessively husky. They can sound sometimes excessively thick. However, again, I'm not going to say that the vocals are bad or wrong or something. No, they're colored, and there are things which are well done in the colored world, let's put it that way, and there are things which are excessively done and just make a mess of everything. In terms of its soundstage, it's a little bit on the closed-in side. I mean, there's decent depth, but it's a little bit closed in, so it's a more cozy kind of a feeling of a soundstage. You don't get that hugeness of a stadium or anything of that sort. No, it's a kind of closed in. So although you would think that then in terms of its 3D capabilities it would be amazing, personally I didn't find that. It does reasonably well in my opinion. I don't do gaming, so I can't really give an opinion with regards to gaming how it would do, but I didn't find it to have a particularly 3D capable soundstage. Imaging is again kind of a hit or miss. There are times where the imaging is more capable than others, but for the most part you can identify the position of the instruments quite well. There's not really a difficulty with that. If anything, maybe you sometimes have some difficulty in identifying the position of the instruments in terms of depth, which kind of seems a little bit weird, because I just mentioned that the depth in terms of the soundstage was perhaps the better option. I really wouldn't know if it's maybe a psychoacoustic thing on my side or what it is, but I did notice that. In terms of the detail retrieval, once again, I find the detail retrieval to be acceptable or decent for what it is, for what this premise in terms of tuning was, but I don't find it to be anything spectacular. I don't find it to be particularly detailed, and it can pick up certain nuances. It can, for example, let me just get a quick song here to give you an example. If, for example, I am listening to, let's just load up here. If, for example, I'm listening to All I Need Is Love from Tim Bowman, it's probably decent there. But for example, if I go and listen to What You're Gonna Do, no, then it plays it fine. It's the thing about the RINKO is it's never offensive, because it's fun. It's a fun listening IM. It's an easy listening IM. It's fun. So you kind of take that as the thing that captivates you and gets your attention going, and forgive it for the flaws that it might have then in certain aspects of detailed retrieval and picking up on the more finer nuances of things. That basically, I think, gives a good overview. It's a fun sounding IM. Good bass, really good bass. I'm not saying, however, by that it's a bass head IM, no, but it's got good bass. It can sometimes even seem to be more bass heavy than what in reality it is, because that big dip that you have, or that big recess of the mids that you have in comparison to the bass into the highs. Nice bass, nice highs, clean, detailed, for what they are. They could be more detailed if the bass wasn't as prominent, I guess. But for what it is, it's, they've got good detail. There's decent enough resolution, but this is not an IEM that you would listen or that you would use if you wanted to listen to more finer music, let's put it that way. It's a great IEM if you like listening to EDM. It's a great IEM if you like listening to some hip hop, perhaps, something which is bouncy, fun, alive. That would be a good. That's where this feels more at home. It's not an IEM that I particularly say does jazz the best. There are other things there are other IEMs that can do jazz better, but again, not offensive. All right. Let's compare them to the IEMs that I have here. Compared to the Senfer DT9, very much the same kind of bass in both of them. Very much. The Senfer has got the mids more alive. They've got more energy. Where the Senfer loses out to the RINKO is then in the polish of the highs. The BA makes itself felt. You notice that it's got that metallicness of it. So tonally, the BA makes itself very known. It sometimes does, because of that, get a little bit harsh, a little bit aggressive. But overall, if you do some tip rolling and you choose your let's say your accessories around it, maybe a slightly warmer source or something, you can make quite easily the Senfer sound very nice. And the truth is, I really enjoyed the Senfer when I tested it, perhaps a year ago or so now. A very, very competent V-shaped signature. Okay. So it trades blows with the RINKO. Let's put it that way. It doesn't beat the RINKO, no, but it trades blows with the RINKO pretty competitively. Compared to the file GizAudio JH3, the bass here, although not as deep, you get a sense of more deepness in the bass, or the sub bass, of more rumble in the RINKO. The bass here is more. It's a cleaner bass. It's got a little bit more impact. So the bass here is very good. The mids as well are very well matched with that bass, and the highs again ample and in more than enough quantity. Where again we do encounter an area where things are not as polished up as they are in the RINKO is precisely in the highs, where up to a certain volume, much like the Senfer, everything is beautiful, everything is hanky-dory. But then once you start going past a certain level of volume, then things can become aggressive. Things can become a little bit too intense, for those that are not very big fans of Chevo, let's put it that way. But again, choose your cable if you believe in that. Choose your tips, which do make a difference. Choose a source, and you can get the file to play really well. And for the $50 odd that it costs, it is an IM that honestly I think deserved a little bit more love than what it cost. Okay. Compared now to the GALILEO. The GALILEO, when I reviewed it, I said it was a very relaxed IM, and I stand by that. It's a very relaxed IM. However, the interesting thing is when I compared it with the RINKO, I found the bass of the GALILEO to be as competent, if not even more competent. And because the matching of the bass with the mids has been done in a more balanced way, you don't have that big recess, I ultimately actually prefer the GALILEO to the RINKO. Be very straightforward with that. I think that the GALILEO really only would need just a little bit extra energy in the treble. Okay, perhaps the energy of the treble of the RINKO to be an absolute outright winner. But as it stands still, I would take the GALILEO over the RINKO. That's the reality. I personally like more the way, I don't dislike the sound of the RINKO by no means, but I like the way that the sound, and especially with what I like listening to, I just like the way that it sounds more on the GALILEO. Female vocals, for example, absolutely beautiful. I mean, I can't really. There isn't a song like Grace, Real People, amazing. It sounds amazing on the Carol DuBois Elephant, sounds amazing on the GALILEO. If anything, like I said, because the treble is so relaxed, so smooth, so buttery, you kind of, okay, I would have liked a little bit more treble but it's never in any way offensive. So in my opinion, the Galileo is a superior IEM to the RINKO. I think it's as equally well built, it's better accessorized in cables and tips and so on. Honestly, you know, a very nice case, although it's hard to open, but it's got a very cool case. I've actually got it here. Very cool case. I really like this case. You know, I have to give my congrats to Letshuoer for that. So it's a nicer sounding, it's a much more capable IEM in terms of its technical aspects. So soundstage, imaging, detailed retrieval, even with the fact that the treble is slightly, let's say, caned, it is a more resolving IEM for me personally than the RINKO is. And then finally the TH-Hi-Fi. The TH-Hi-Fi, as I mentioned earlier, is again an IEM that kind of went very much under the radar. And the TH-Hi-Fi, for me personally, is a better IEM than the RINKO. It's a 1+2, but everything has been very well executed. And when you look at the curve of this, I mean, the bass is basically flat by just over 200 Hertz. So it's got that kind of bass curve, very much like you see in the variations. Very well tuned, honestly, very well tuned, very well put together IEM. The mids, well executed. Vocal sound perfect for me. You know, there's really nothing I can't fault there. Timbre and tonality much better than the timbre and tonality of the RINKO. It's a way more open sound, although you can still consider it to be kind of V-shaped in its signature. And then the highs, again, in my opinion, very well executed. It is of the ones here using BAs. You know, the same for the GIZAudio, the JH3, the Galileo, and then obviously the TH-Hi-Fi. I think it is the one that does BAs the best executed. It's the best execution of BAs, definitely. Much better than these two, you know, on a different league. And as compared to the single BA in the Galileo, if I consider that it's got two and one is, you know, emphasized on the highs, it still is better. You can feel you don't notice that there's two BAs. For me, it just comes across as just one single BA, and the marrying of those BAs with the DD driver has been done very well. It's actually this one actually uses a 9.2mm driver, if I'm not mistaken. So slightly, well, that uses a huge driver, but the rest use all 10mm. Technically as well, very capable. Very good soundstage, plenty wide, good height, good depth, very good imaging, detailed retrieval, again, perfect. So this, again, much like the Galileo, are, in my opinion, superior IEMs to the RINKO. These two, they trade blows with the RINKO up to a certain aspect, especially with regards to the volume. And then, yes, the RINKO takes over. But it doesn't just absolutely annihilate them or anything of the sort. No. Again, very much what happens, yeah, these are superior IEMs to the RINKO, but it's not like they annihilate the RINKO completely. If I have to be objective in terms of certain aspects, yes, there is superiority. I mean, the build of this IEM is way superior to the build of the RINKO, way superior. The accessories that it brings, I mean, this is the stock cable, you know, accessories that it brings, tips, everything. Very, very well done. You know, it's a real pity that the face red didn't get a little bit more recognition. So overall, what is my conclusion about the SeeAudio RINKO? A nice IEM. Let's put it that way. A nice IEM. Would I recommend it? As I usually say for the majority of the times, I would say go listen to it. Okay, listen to it. If this is what you want, fine. I don't particularly find it to be a versatile IEM when it comes to genres of music that it will do well across the board. But having said that, I also know that is down to the fact that it was tuned in this particular way. So the intention here was for it to be more of a specific genre IEM than an overall do everything. Okay, it's decently well built, decently accessorized. The price, as I said, I can't really confirm the price. What I've heard, it would be something around $100. If you asked me what I think would be a more fair price now that I've listened to it, with a little bit more detail. I would say a price of around $70 to $80 would be a price that I think would be more adequate for the RINKO. And yeah, guys, that's basically it. I mean, there's really not much more that I can say about the RINKO. It's a valid enough attempt. It's not offensive to me, but it's also not an IM that I try to say, no, get it because that's the one. No. Anyway, I'll show you the graphs. As always, like and subscribe. Any questions you guys might have, please feel free to ask me. All right, you take care now. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the review of the SeeAudio RINKO. This is straight away the graph of the RINKO. As you can see, it is a definite V shape. We're talking about 68 to 70 to 80, so 12 dBs of let's say interval of the frequency band, let's put it that way. At least the good thing is that, you know, both the bass and the mids are basically evenly matched. Although it is a V-shaped, as we can obviously see, it is a well done V-shaped. Certain, let's say, aspects have been paid attention to. Of course, with this amount of bass and mid bass, there is bleed into the mids, as I mentioned, and that does obviously take away a little bit from the vocals, especially, as I mentioned, from the female vocals, and makes the male vocals a little bit over husky sometimes. So it is definitely a colored sounding IM, but it's well done, as I've mentioned before. The pinna gain is relatively well done in the sense that it's not too aggressive. Peaks at around 2.5, then it's got a nice plateau, dips at around 5, which is good to avoid any signs of sibilance, which don't exist. There's a couple of related peak and then extension past 10K. This year usually does indicate a good 3D effect, which, as I mentioned, it's not that it isn't capable of it, it is, but it's not as significant as what the graph would indicate. And I have seen other IMs more capable of that 3D-ness, okay? And I think it's actually more down to the fact that the bass, like I've mentioned, camouflages the rest than necessarily it actually not being there. Anyway, that's the graph of the RINKO. Let me start then first by showing you the graph compared with the graph of the BGVP TH-Hi-Fi face red. I think it's quite self-explanatory. It's got a very nice bass curve, as you can see. I mean, by 300 hertz, it's basically flat. I mean, it's flat at 300 hertz, so minimal to no bleed. Everything stays within a 68, roughly 77. The majority of the frequency range stays within a 9 dB band, which I think is pretty commendable. There's only this little bit of extra peak here, which is 77. Yeah, it's about 3 dBs. So not really too detrimental, let's put it that way. And then there's got extension past 10K as well. It's a very nice sounding IM, especially the mids, because of this balance between the two extremes is being better done than in the RINKO. The mids are, well, way more noticeable. That there's a better balance in terms of vocals and instruments, okay? So that's that. The next one now is the GizAudio JH3. Again, bass very nicely done, as you can see. There's this dip here between 2 and 4K, although it's not as noticeable as you would think. What you do notice, yes, is that besides the couple of related peak, there is an extra amount of energy here, which showcases the use of BAs, and you know, it's like I mentioned, when you really crank up the volume, it shows itself, and it can be a little bit harsh or aggressive, okay? But otherwise, for the most, I mean, it's a very nice sounding IM. I really have no big or major points to point at it. It's a nice sounding IM for what it is. The next one is the Sampher. Okay, very similar bass curve, very similar, and it's got the same kind of bass. I would perhaps say even maybe just a little bit faster, okay, maybe, but very similar bass curve. And then yes, it isn't exactly what you would call a nice, let's say, a mid to upper mid and treble area to look at, because it's all this up and down and so on and so forth. But the truth is, it's not as bad as what it looks, and then, as this is the case with the FIFIGO, you only really notice things getting a little bit out of control is in the treble when you really start cranking it up, because it does show a slight lack of polish in that aspect. It shows a little bit of aggressiveness. You do start feeling a little bit this peak here, 4K, and you also do feel that this part here is not as polished as what it could be. Again, manifesting or you know, making it quite evident that a BA is being used, and obviously not in the most ideal of ways. And then finally, we have the GALILEO, which, I mean, this is really smooth by comparison. Everything in the GALILEO sits within a 68 to 76, so an 8 dB window. So you at least for me, I don't consider this a V shape, or if you want to call it a V shape, it's a very mild V shape. And you would think that the bass is shy as compared to the RINKO, but in reality, no, it isn't. It's actually a very nice bass. It's got a nice, engaging, warm signature. It's a very unfatiguing, very relaxed IEM to listen to. If there's obviously something to point at it, is the treble extension is just enough. You know, it could do with a little bit more of treble extension. And the RINKO, if I have to look at the treble by itself, it is very good. It's just that it doesn't showcase what it can do, because the way the bass has been done is just overly done. But anyway, the reality is this is the way it was tuned. It was tuned like this on purpose. So I mean, it doesn't really matter that I'm here pointing that as a negative or that whatever. It's this is the way they wanted it to sound, and that's the way it is, and it is a fun sounding IEM. I would, as I said earlier, recommend that you actually listen to it before deciding on buying it. But it is a fun sounding IEM. It is a novel, let's say, setup to be used at $100, and it's quite interesting because it joins two other IEMs which are now priced at $100, which all of them have different ways of doing things, but all of them are pretty good. Well, one of them I haven't heard, so I'm not going to say it's pretty good, but at least two of them are pretty good, and I'm obviously talking about the RINKO, the GALILEO, and the Legato. The Legato is another one of another IEM with different implementation in terms of using two dynamic drivers, priced at around $100, and again with a different tuning philosophy in mind and so on. But anyway, this is my take on the SeeAudio RINKO. Any questions you guys might have, please feel free to ask. And as always, just like, subscribe. It helps the algorithm. It helps the YouTube gods favor my videos, and obviously I would appreciate it, of course. All right, guys, have a good one. Take care. Bye bye.